only thing we have to fear is
in war.
Fear itself.
There is no substitute for victory.
Let us never negotiate out of fear.
We stand undivided, forever united, fighting hand in hand for the liberty we've earned, for glory and honor, for our sons and daughters, ever mindful of the lessons we've learned. Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome to the intersection of faith and politics. WallBuilders Live with David Barton and Rick Green. Thanks for joining us today. Visit our websites, wallbuilders.com and wallbuilderslive.com. And also join us on Facebook there and get involved in the conversation. Send your questions in to radio@wallbuilders.com. That's radio@wallbuilders.com. We get to as many of those as we can on Thursdays during our Foundations of Freedom Thursday programs. David, it's a great time of the year for those of us that love the public policy side of things and getting some good things changed and championing issues we really care about, because all of our state legislatures, or most of them, are starting to gather right now. They're coming together to make law. Now, that on one hand is really bad, because as long as your legislators are out of town, you're much safer. But now that they're all there, we have some opportunities to do some good things.
Yeah, we do. And I just got back from the federal Congress. I was up there. A number of the congressmen had asked me to come up there and give some tours for them, for groups that they brought to the Capitol. And so I was giving some tours throughout the Capitol. Of course, the Supreme Court was always in the U.S. Capitol until 1935, when FDR said, hey, they need their own building. And they were always there because the Founding Fathers wanted the courts under the watchful eye of Congress. Congress is the one who organized the courts, and Congress is the one who told how they could operate, and all the details came from Congress. So the Supreme Court justices were there having to look square in the eyes of congressmen and senators every day. And so as I was down in the old Supreme Court talking about how things worked with the checks and balances type of stuff, there's a young man there, and I'm going to guess he was 13 or 14, and he said, so what I've been told about checks and balances is that the court checks Congress, and Congress checks the president, and the president checks the court. Is that right? And I said, no, that's actually not right. It's not just one check on the other branch. Each branch has some response, but the court has the least ability to check the other branches. You go into the Federalist Papers, and it has a section where it talks about what Alexander Hamilton called constitutional arms of self-defense. And the most tools of self-defense are given to the Congress, because the Congress is elected by the people, and the people need to be able to thwart off assaults that come from the court or from the president. So the Constitution gives Congress a lot more ways to keep the other two branches under control. Next comes the president, and the president has ways he can respond back to Congress, but also ways to keep the court under control. And when it comes to the court, it's got very, very few ways to affect the other branches in the Constitution. Now, they've taken a whole lot since then, particularly in the last 50 years since the Earl Warren courts and judicial activism. They've made a lot of tools for themselves, but they're not constitutional. So in looking at that, if you think about the five entities that are mentioned in the Constitution, the five major entities, you have Congress, you have the president, you have the courts, you have the people, and you have the states. Those are the five key entities. So every one of them is given constitutional arms of self-defense. Congress, the president, of course, the people, of course, in elections. That's the way they can defend themselves really well. They can even get at the court through elections by throwing out the president who did the wrong judges, and throwing out the senators who confirmed them and say, we won't put up with that anymore. And then suddenly all the new judges coming in are quite different because the people made their voice heard. But when you get to the states, you say, my gosh, what is the states are protected in the 10th Amendment, but what if Congress crosses the line with the states? And what if Congress does stuff that the states are supposed to do? What way does the state have to defend itself? What are its constitutional arms of self-defense? And they're given in Article 5 of the Constitution. They have a right, as the states, to convene a convention of the states to say, we've had it with the federal government, and we're putting these limitations on the government. So convening a convention of the states is what the Constitution provides for the states to be able to push back. And right now, there's probably not much more encroachment going on than that of the federal government against the states, getting into education and transportation, immigration. Yes, immigration was a state issue even back in the founding days, because when you came to America, you didn't live in the United States. You lived in Maryland, or you lived in Georgia, or you lived in Texas. So states controlled immigration. They didn't control borders, but they set standards for immigration. So you look at all these areas where the feds have gotten into, and the tool that the states have is a convention of states. And now that we're in a brand new legislative session, that's something that a lot of states are starting to look at. Let's get together as states, and let's put some pushback on the federal government. And our friend Mike Farris, Mike is head of this national movement working with state legislators on the Convention of the States. And here at the start of the session, we thought, it's a good time to get Mike on. Let's talk about this. Let people know what's going in their own states on this pushback from the states and ways that we can help in our own states to push the federal government back into its place and get those constitutional arms of self-defense going for the states.
Well, he's a great guy to have on about it, and to be leading it. Unquestionable conservative credentials, and great conservative intellectual leader in America. So thrilled to have him on to talk about it some more and find out what's going to happen in the next few months with all these states that are considering this. Mike Farris, our guest today. Stay with us on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Although education has remained an emphasis in America for nearly 200 years, what has changed the most over that period of time is the philosophy of education. For example, while religion finds no place of refuge in our schools today, such was not the case at the time of our founding fathers. In fact, when the Delaware Indian chiefs brought their youth to be trained in America's schools, on June the 12th, 1779, George Washington told them, "You do well to wish to learn our arts and our way of life, and above all, the religion of Jesus Christ. These will make you a greater and happier people than you are. Congress will do everything they can to assist you in this wise intention." According to George Washington, what students learned above all in American education at the time of the Founding Fathers was the religion of Jesus Christ.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back to WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us. Our good friend Mike Farris with us today. He's the Chancellor of Patrick Henry College, chairman of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and the point person on Convention of States. Really great movement happening right now in our nation. Mike, always good to have you, bro.
It is wonderful to be with you, my friend.
Hey, you've been at it hard over the last year, all over the country, working with legislators, working with activists across the nation, continuing to gain momentum and really move forward. Last time I visited with you just a few weeks ago, it looked like some great things were going to happen in 2015 with regard to an opportunity to reset the balance and put our Constitution back out front.
Exactly. And because of the really excellent election results in 2014, we believe that there is a realistic chance that in 2014 we're actually going to get to 34 states.
You said 14, you meant 15, right?
I did. I still think it's 1969. That's kind of my default drive. But in 2015, we think that there's a really good chance, because of the 2014 elections, of getting to 34 states. Last year, our first year in operation, we had Georgia, Florida, and Alaska completely pass the Convention of States application. And we have prime sponsors lined up in about 31 states right now, and there's several more that are just almost ready to be finalized. And so we're going to have more than enough states in play in 2015 to be able to get to the 34 states. Now, if it boils over and takes one more year, we won't complain too much, but we're going to make a real serious effort at getting on board this year.
And right now is the time. All the state legislatures, or most all of them, are coming into a session right now. So if folks at home want to have some influence on this and want to have a voice, right now is the time to do that.
Exactly. We need you to come to the conventionofstates.com website. We have a petition there that it's linked up to give us a direct email to your state House member and your state senator. It will send that out automatically in your name, And then you'll be on our contact list so that when the vote's starting to take in committee, and then on the floor of the House, and the committee, and the Senate, and the floor of the Senate, there will be about 3 or 4 times during the next 6 months we're going to ask you to make a call. So if you're a listener and willing to invest about 30 minutes of your time in the next 6 months, you can help us guarantee that we'll be successful in this and rearrange the federal union back to the original meaning of the Constitution.
Mike, we hear it all the time. I know you do as well. People that think there's nothing they can do to make a difference, or they say it's just out of control, it's too big, my voice doesn't matter, or I don't know where to start. I mean, we hear that all the time, and I understand that frustration because it does seem like just a Leviathan. But right now, you have an opportunity, everyone has an opportunity to have a voice that will make a huge difference. This is a solution, as you say, as big as the problem, but those voices have got to be heard, and they've got to be heard in this next 6-month period.
Right, and the realistic thing is that if 1% of the American public will contact their state legislature, I guarantee you this will be successful. And, we think that electoral activity and political activity is governed by majorities, and that's always true. But in this case, since we're talking about citizen lobbying, it is a majority of the people that actually participate, and 1% will blow all the record books away. So that's what our goal is to find someplace actually between 1/10 of 1% and 1% of the American public who will stand up, speak up, and show up. And if that happens, we can win. So we shouldn't think, well, my voice won't count. In this context, your voice really will count more than any other kind of political activity you can do.
It's amplified, right? I mean, it's magnified. One voice has so much more weight in this particular this particular battle, and like you're saying, I mean, 1/10 to 1%. I mean, even in the last few years, just the number of Americans that have woken up and said, "Hey, there is a problem," and it's on their radar, is easily 15 to 20% of the country. So you only need 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 100 of those that are actually now paying attention to just take action in this case.
That's right, and people say, well, they're not obeying the Constitution anyway, so how will this matter? And the answer is the government pretends to obey the Constitution. They're obeying not the Constitution as written, but the Constitution as interpreted by the Supreme Court. So what this effort will do will take away the Supreme Court's ability to manipulate the Constitution. When the General Welfare Clause is replaced with language that says something like this: if the federal government if the state governments can spend money on a topic, the federal government can't spend money on that same topic. That is the original meaning of the General Welfare Clause. And if we say it explicitly, even the Supreme Court can't get it wrong. And we can fix this, and we can make it really happen.
It's like rebooting the Constitution you get all these viruses in your computer, you get all these problems. I mean, that's what has happened, and it's all been distorted. Like you said, they're not following the Constitution. They're following this made up judicial interpretation of the Constitution. So now's a chance to reboot. It's right there in the Constitution. The founders saw this coming. They knew we would get to this point. They knew we would need to do something like this, and you guys have done such a great job of making it possible for people to plug in and be part of this solution that the Founding Fathers gave us. Got to take a very quick break. Mike Farris is our guest today. The website to find out more, conventionofstates.com. It's real. It is not only possible, it's probable, and you can be a big part of it. Back in a moment right now on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Shortly after the American Revolution, America had become the envy of the world. It still remains a wonder of the modern world as 219 years later, America has become the longest ongoing constitutional republic in the history of the world. What was the foundation upon which our founding fathers established this great nation? According to John Adams, the foundation was Christianity. John Adams declared, "The general principles on which the fathers achieved independence were the general principles of Christianity. Now I will avow that I then believed and now believe that those general principles of Christianity are as eternal and immutable as the existence and attributes of God." According to Founding Father John Adams, it was the principles of Christianity which formed the foundation for American government.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. We got Mike Farris with us today. We're getting an update on convention of states, what's going to look like, what's going to happen in 2015. Mike, when you started, just barely a year ago on this, could you have imagined that so much progress would happen so fast?
No, I really, believe that this is evidence of God's timing and God's provision for our country. We thought we were going to have to get a bunch of states that are traditionally very liberal to be able to support this, to be able to get to the right number of 34 states. But the electorate did our work for us in November and changed a lot of those very liberal states into much more reasonable states. And so the era of big government really can be put to an end if we want to act. And that's the real issue before us. Should Washington, D.C. continue to have unabated, unchecked power, or should we really have true checks and balances? That's the issue we're debating. The founders believed in three things. They believed in good leaders, good policy, and good structure. And our movement has done a lot of good work in trying to get good leaders in place, trying to get good policy in place, but we've all neglected the structural issues until just very recently. We need to see that checks and balances matter, that not allowing the president to make law for us, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. All parties of presidents have done this. Some are more than others, but nonetheless, presidents are making law and they shouldn't be. The courts are making law and they shouldn't be. And they're using UN treaties to make law and they shouldn't be. And so we can put a stop to all this kind of nonsense with a few carefully drafted amendments and get that done within the next year or so.
Just a quick rundown of the process itself. So we got to have 34 states call for this. You guys have the sample resolutions and legislation to be passed by the states. You're coaching legislators. You're showing them what to do here and how to get this done. Just walk us through it very quickly, the process of how this will happen.
There are three stages. The first stage is that 34 states have to propose a convention for the same purpose. And then after that, you have the convention, and at this convention, it's one state, one vote. And the majority of states control the final language of any amendment. Then it's sent back to the state legislatures for ratification, and 38 states, that's 3/4, have to ratify. So it will be a big national consensus, and it won't be able to be anything controversial, really, but term limits on officials, including judges, having a balanced budget, having limits on spending, limits on taxes. Those things have wide support across the spectrum, and we believe that that's going to be the outcome in a couple of years when it's all said and done.
I love it, man. I'm so excited. As I've said several times on the program, and certainly in talking with you, once I heard you speak at the Legislators Conference a year ago and actually show a game plan for how this could be done, it really, it put wings to this dream of being able to do something this big. Even I've gotten down before thinking it's just gotten so big, it's out of control. How do we fix it? And now there's an opportunity right at our fingertips. Tell me just real quick before we go, the last year or so, have you seen the attitudes changing? Initially, a lot of opposition, even among some conservative legislators. It looks to me like a lot of folks have begun to study this, realize what the founders actually intended, and once they saw the meat on the bones of how it would be done, they realized, hey, this can work, and it can work well, and it doesn't have the risk that we thought it had in the past.
We have seen a big shift in our direction, thanks to leadership like you and David and Glenn Beck and many other people. We have Robbie George has signed our statement, or Jefferson statement, Matt Staver, Liberty Counsel, and a number of other conservative leaders, a whole lot. Tom Coburn is actually coming on board to help us in a material way now that he's left the U.S. Senate. And so more and more conservative leaders and the people that, many of these people thought years ago that, this is a dangerous process. But the more they studied it, they realized, no, there's a lot of checks and balances. There really is control over the process. And it's the process the founders gave us to save the country when the federal government got too big for its britches and became dangerous. And that's where we are today.
It's got to be done, folks. ConventionofStates.com. Go check it out. It is the solution as big as the problem. Mike Farris, I cannot thank you enough for all the work you've you've put in to get us to this point, praying for a great 2015. Folks that want to be a part of this, you can make a difference. Stop just complaining around the dinner table and screaming at the TV. Real action steps that make a real difference. It won't take much of your time. Go check it out at the website, plug into your state, and what you can do. Mike, keep it up, bro. Let's get you back soon for updates as these legislative sessions continue to meet and see where we're winning a lot of these battles. I noticed you got Governor Jindal involved. Looks like a lot of states are going to come on board very quickly here, so we'd love to get you back for more updates.
Thank you so much. We'll be here.
Back in a moment with David Barton. Have you ever wanted to learn more about the United States Constitution but just felt like, man, the classes are boring, or it's just that old language from 200 years ago, or I don't know where to start? People want to know, but it gets frustrating because you don't know where to look for truth about the Constitution either. Well, we've got a special program for you available now called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green, and it's actually a teaching done on the Constitution at Independence Hall in the very room where the Constitution was framed. We take you both to Philadelphia, the cradle of liberty in Independence Hall, and to the WallBuilders Library, where David Barton brings the history to life to teach the original intent of our founding fathers. We call it the Quick Start Guide to the Constitution because in just a few hours through these videos, you will learn the Citizen's Guide to America's Constitution. You'll learn what you need to do to help save our constitutional republic. It's fun, it's entertaining, and it's going to inspire you to do your part to preserve freedom for future generations. It's called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green. You can find out more information on our website now at wallbuilders.com.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back to WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us. We're back with David Barton now. David, a lot of progress on this issue. I don't even know if we were as optimistic a year and a half ago that there's so much would change so fast in moving in this direction.
Well, it's good to see that, as Mike said, even the critics are changing their attitudes, that a lot of that's going away. And I think a lot of that is explained by the Constitution. I was always told, and you and I have talked before about how that we originally posed this idea, because I was told it would be a constitutional convention. It's not. It's a convention of the states.
That's right.
It is not a...
I even made the mistake. I called it that myself for a long time.
That's right. I did too, because that's what I was told. And, I know I always say go back to the original documents, and I didn't, and I hadn't read the Article 5 clause. And when I went back and reread it, not only is it not a constitutional convention, it's a convention of the states, and it says that you can only oppose amendments to this Constitution. You can't propose a new Constitution. You can only propose amendments to this Constitution. So that's the safeguard, is if what they call the Constitutional Convention, which is not a Constitutional Convention, if it did come out with a new Constitution, you simply say, won't work. It has to be amendments to this Constitution.
And you still have that huge safeguard of how many, you got to have
38 states, and it only takes one body in 38. It doesn't take both bodies. It only takes one. So
to say no.
To say no, 13 bodies out of 99 bodies can kill this thing.
That's right. That's right.
One body, and that's easy. Just the neighbors of Texas could kill that one.
Yeah.
So but I was really impressed in listening to Mike talk about how it doesn't take much to really do this. As he said, if you give 30 minutes in the next 6 months, you can change the direction of America. 30 minutes? Surely we got time for 30 minutes.
I think that's part of what excites me so much about this is it's not, so often it's, the politicians got to do it or Congress has got, whoever. In this case, everybody gets to be involved. Each of us really does have a voice in this process, which I think was part of the genius of the founders.
And, what he said if 1% of the public will contact the state legislature, this will be successful. And that sounds like hyperbole. But think about it for a minute. 1% of the public. We have 330 million people in America. So 1% is 3.3 million. If 3.3 million Americans contacted Congress, now we're not talking states, just contacted Congress, it would shut the switchboard down for weeks. Literally, just 1% of the nation would shut the switchboard down for weeks. But now we're talking about the state level, where that instead of having nearly 700,000 constituents, if you're in New Hampshire, you've only got 4,500 people in your entire district. Now you start talking about calling a state legislator, man, it gets real easy, real fast to get their attention. They're not in 700,000 people districts. This is easy to do. And even went so far as to say if it was just 1/10 of 1%, well, that's 330,000 people. And that's enough to fry the state legislatures. If they got 330,000 contacts, man, they would be locked up in gridlock. Massive fear would overtake them. So this really is not hyperbole. This is something that can be done. 1% could absolutely turn this thing on its head. And as he said, if you'll give 30 minutes to the next 6 months, man, the era of big government can be put to an end. And I love what you guys were talking about. This is a constitutional reboot. And even what Mike said, if you just rewrote the welfare clause to its original intent, and that is that the states can spend money on it, the feds can't. My gosh, think what that involves. I mean, that becomes education, that becomes the transportation, that becomes the police, that becomes all the stuff you get the feds out of. That's the way it originally was.
Yeah,
so,
and I think it'll help with the frustration. Everybody feels frustrated because the system itself seems to be stacked against the people. This is a way to reboot that system.
That's right.
In favor of the people the way the founders intended it.
Yeah, it's really good, and this is a great way to start the year, a great amount of optimism, and we've been very blessed. WallBuilders Live, we are told regularly by people in the program, that's the most active folks. I've never had as many people contact me as the folks on your program. They've been on national programs, big programs, and we are national too, but we've got active people, and we can make a difference on this one, that's for sure.
Let's do it, folks. Everybody take some action. Go check out the website, conventionofstates.com. You'll have links today at wallbuilderslive.com. Appreciate you listening today to WallBuilders Live.
We stand undivided.